says there's 2 live viewers. What does that mean?
Yeah, that's us.
Oh.
All right. Hi, I'm Alexia Anastasio, and we're doing a blab. This is how that we have a guest, Seth.
Hello.
So our title of this blab is how Seth Jared, who's just joined us, raised money for his movie. Hashtag filmmaking, hashtag indie film, hashtag financing. So if you have any questions about filmmaking, indie film, financing, feel free to bring that up. So Seth, please tell the audience who you are.
Hi, I'm Seth. Let's see. I'm a film. I mean, I've been in film production since I was a teenager. What happened is I went to NYU film school when I was a younger person, and and then 7 years later, I went to make my first real movie. And it was at that point that I realized that film school had been a complete waste of both time and money. I didn't learn anything about how to actually make an actual real movie, not a student film, not a short film, how to actually raise money, how to, inspire a crew, how to make a full-length script. Nothing. So I had an great and putting together a team, and that was my film school. And then what happened is I went on to LA, and when I got out here, I was working in the business, but what I also was doing, I found a lot of other young people who were graduates of film schools who were in much worse shape than me. They had terrible debt, and many of them were working as PAs. They had left the industry, no idea what to do to become a director, and it really bothered me. So I wrote a book about NYU, and then I started a website called Film School Secrets, where I was basically like the kind of either badass, either jerk or a hero of this, where I was like, these film schools have become such a scam. I went to, quote, the best film school in the country. It's a joke, I remember coming to my first interview, my first job interview in LA, and I remember being very proud of my NYU diploma. And the temp agency people, it was an entertainment specific temp agency who places people in like studio jobs, and they looked at me like I was insane. I put the degree at the top of the resume, and they're like, "What is this?" I said, "It's my film degree," and they were like, "Well, what's your experience?" It's like, "Well, I did production work in high school, but then I spent 4 years in school." They're like, "Well, you put your production work on the resume, but nothing about school. No one cares." So. Yeah, it was pretty nuts. And then, so I started the website and I put together a course, and it was really cool as I was able to help younger people skip school and just start getting on actual film sets and giving them like no BS advice about how to get going. And, a lot of the stuff they don't talk about in school. And now I do that. I mentor people, and I'm producing my own stuff. So did that answer the question?
Yeah, that's the start of it. Yeah, I love, because not just the people that are coming on board, but the people also are going to be watching the replay. I would love for them to know your story, like after film school, after you went to that temp agency interview, and they kind of laughed at you at your resume. Like what did you do about it?
Well, what happened? That's a good question. I got into a different part of sort of the industry, which is the marketing side of things. I actually had a lot of frustration because there is this, how do I put it? I'm trying to think of how to answer this because I've done so many different things. But basically, I realized that there's no ladder to climb. If you want to direct, you just have to direct. So I started shooting my own stuff, and like I said, I'd already learned how to raise money, and I started more becoming a consultant to filmmakers because I saw there was this lack of information. And the other thing I realized is that, in school, they gear you up because it's like you go there because you want to direct, and then they talk about jobs, but there's a total disconnect because there's no directing jobs that you can get out of school. So what a lot of my classmates I went to NYU, some of the most talented people I've ever met. None of them are directing. Maybe one guy. And it's always the person that has the balls to just be like, I'm going to direct, I'm going to figure out money. But everyone else who just got a job, I have friends who work in the industry, but what they do is you get an entry. I was like, I don't want an entry level job. I don't want to be a PA, because when you're a PA, it's terrible work. It's hell. Everyone knows that, you know. Not actually, you don't know that till you do it, but it's like being a PA is like, it's exciting if you're really young and you just want to be around the movies. But I was like, I looked around, I was like, no, this is not, what am I doing? I'm not interested in just working on a film set. I have to learn about the money side of things. And honest to goodness, what happened is, you know, the industry and everything has changed so much in the last even 5 years, because it really used to be, it really used to be that you needed such a miracle to make a movie. You know, I mean, look at Kevin Smith and Clerks in the 90s. The budget on that movie is $27,000. And you're like, you look at it, you're like, why, where did the money go? Like, what did $27,000 do? That was just to get it shot. That was just for the equipment and the film, because there was no digital back then. Now, if he had shot Clerks today, the budget could have been, with a 5D, it could have been a $500 budget, literally, because he didn't feed anybody. You know, no one got paid. So, you know, I basically spent my time learning how to, you know, what's the way to make a movie nowadays. And I learned, I worked in marketing. And marketing and business is what a young filmmakers really need to know about. That's why we're talking about this. It was like, you definitely, I mean, on the art side of things, of course, I have a lot to say about what's lacking in terms of what the film schools actually teach as far as the exercises and how to make a decent story. But where it's really lacking is on the practical side of things. And that's what I, you know, was learning about, because I went off and I wasn't working directly in film. I was managing $1 million worth of, you know, paid advertising for the last 4 years, and learning, as I said, as Dov Seaman says, the film business is really a marketing business. You know, it really is, because at the end of the day, people buy the trailer, they buy, you know, what the movie's supposed to be about. They go in, they pay their $7, and then, you know, you don't hear people asking for refunds on movies very much. You know, it's not like that kind of a product. It's like, how is it packaged? How is it marketed? And how can you sell it to other people to make people want to watch it? And none of that is discussed in school. So, you know, I kind of got like what I needed. Now that I'm working on my current project, it's all designed with the marketing in mind, which most filmmakers never do, which is another reason why they have a hard time raising money, which is something I'll get into.
Yeah, right. So I just wanted to give a shout out to Monica and Ashley. Thanks for joining us. Feel free to jump on the open seat if you have a question, or if you don't want to be live, just type in the chat box. So yeah, so let's get into the part that you're doing now and you've done in the past. How did you raise money for your movie, and how are you raising money now?
Well, there's two. I like to. So what I actually did was. So it was 2006 when I raised my first experience of trying to raise money. And I made I had some amazing experiences, and I made a lot of mistakes, which is what you'll do, because I mean, I literally had no idea what I was doing. And what I like to give people a preface to before you actually raise any money, don't. Because if it's your first project, because that was the biggest mistake, is that today there's kids spending 50 grand on a short film, which is like, it's literally like taking your money and burning it. It's such a waste of money, because the short film is not going to do anything for you. And you also are proving to any producers or investors that you have no sense of a budget, because you could shoot a great feature for $50,000 these days. These kids they get the 35 millimeter. What I ended up doing is I actually had a script that was too big for a first feature. It was a comedy about a guy who sees his life as a baseball game. Like when he's out with a girl, he's at the plate and she's the pitcher, and there's the play-by-play guys and everything. And it's called Breaking Balls. And the script was funny enough where a lot of professionals in my hometown, and this is the first thing I learned too, is that if you want to make a movie, and you do it outside of LA, it's very exciting for people. So you get a lot of support. That's like the first tip I give anybody is like, if you're in LA and you're trying to play the LA game, it sucks. because it's a game of just it's a big swinging dick game. You know, who's in it, you know, who's hot now. But if you make even any movie, like any movie where I was from, Rochester, people are going to be excited about it, because who the hell is making a movie in the middle of Kansas or in the middle of Michigan or whatever? I mean, well, Michigan actually has more film production, but it's very exciting. And that's the first thing, is like, you know, your movie is like, and that's what I found, is that when I was networking with people in my town, it was like a big deal. Oh, people are like interested. That doesn't mean they're going to put money in initially, but it's an exciting thing for people to be part of, and that's where you want to be coming from. But what I was saying is, I got my hands on a AAA baseball stadium, and I was going to shoot the movie with just a bunch of college kids. And what happened is, I hooked up with some professionals, and the budget went from being probably a $10,000 or $20,000 budget to be shot on digital, real fun, you know, guerrilla style shoot that we could have gotten shot to an actual. I got, you know, professional DP, professional production manager. The woman worked with Robert Duvall. I got really kind of starstruck by the fact that I was working with these people who had experience. And then the budget went up to $250,000, which $250,000 is like a small budget in Hollywood, but to any normal person, that's a shitload of money, especially if you don't have it and you need to get it. So I was sitting there going, everyone looked at me and they're like, it's just, and I was like, they looked at me like I had 200. I was like, I don't know how the fuck am I supposed to raise this money? I literally called up NYU and I was like, I have a script, I have a crew, I have everything. How do I get the money? And they were really rude to me, actually. They were the career people there. They're terrible. It's a terrible school. They're so unsupportive of their alumni. Unless you go off and become like, you know, a Sundance winner, then they're like, oh, we did that. Yeah. So I had lunch with a guy who I knew had raised $300,000 for a movie. And I sat down with him. And that's a big part of everything in film, is that when you're excited and open and you talk to people, stuff opens up. That's the biggest problem a lot of filmmakers have. A lot of filmmakers come in, and I know I talk to them and they're like, oh, I want this, I want that. I was like, your mindset and the energy that you project to people is everything. Because some people come in and they have this filmy attitude of like, I'm a filmmaker, I'm making a serious piece about, it's like you turn people off. But if you that's what I teach my students to do, genre movies. Like, if you're making a horror movie, an action movie, a comedy. I was making a comedy, but people love comedies. They want to be part of a comedy. This is fun. If I was like, I'm making a movie about a middle-aged woman who overdoses on drugs and realizes that life is meaningless, you want to be part of that? It's like, yeah, you know, like maybe the crew people will, but investors and the public are going to be, it's not really, you know. So, and I know that, you know, it's not to poo on everyone's vision, but it's thinking about your project from the perspective of the people you're approaching. That's the other thing with investors. People are like, well, I need money for my movie. Well, what is the investor getting out of it? That's the big question. So I realized, you know, people who wanted to be part of this project wanted to be part of something fun. They want to be part of something exciting. And you have to really think of it from the position of, if they're going to give me $5,000 or $10,000 or $50,000, what are they getting? Because most filmmakers, they have no awareness of that. It's very much just like, it's my vision, it's my art. It's like, dude, you got to think of it from the guy who's giving you the money. What are they getting? And that's where, you know, I had to learn. I didn't have a business plan. I had to come up with a business plan. I got with an attorney. I had to put together the right legal documents to actually receive the money, which there's different ways to approach that. But legally, most people don't realize this. If you are going to receive over $10,000 from a stranger, the SEC, now they don't go around knocking on doors, breaking doors down, like, freeze, drop the film slate, you know. You didn't get proper clearance, but it's more for your protection than anything, is that it's basically the SEC in the 30s, you know, with the stock market crash, all these normal people lost their money, and there were all these kooky investments. You know, it was like, invest money here and you'll make a ton on, you know, magic elixir. So now the SEC is like, you have to govern. If someone can't, like, legally, it's like, if someone isn't accredited, like if they're not rich, they aren't really allowed to put in $10,000 into a movie, because it's a high risk investment. So you got to be reading people who have means and things like that. They're all around. You know, our investors and the people I've worked with is that dentists, doctors, attorneys, accountants, people who own businesses that are successful. They are the perfect people to talk to, because, and as I said, don't go to the people in Hollywood. The people in Hollywood are terrible to talk to when you're just starting out, because they're even P.T. Anderson couldn't get financed on his movie, The Master. He had just done There Will Be Blood, and he just won all these Oscars. And then he went in and said, I want to make a movie about L. Ron Hubbard based on, and nobody would finance him. I know it's because of the Scientologist or whatnot, but he couldn't get financing. This is P.T. Anderson. Yeah. So I was like, you go into Hollywood, I mean, it's not like it's an easy sell with normal people, but if you go to an ordinary person who has some money and they want to be part of a movie, it's very exciting and sexy. And you want to be able to sell people on the business side of it. You want to actually think about how the movie could make money, and you want to have some decent projections, which is what we have. It's like every business has projections, even if they're complete BS. You have to show you put a thought in, but you don't want to. No one's going to get into a movie because they really think it's going to make a ton of money. It's 90% the excitement, believing in you and the story or the movie, and then 10% is like, well, maybe we could make some money with it. But if you're going after just the money people, that's when you get, and like we had an offer for about, we're doing, this is a relatively low budget movie we're doing now. It's like 150, but we put a ton more into the marketing. But we had somebody who came to us. There's these old school, the old school of wake making. Okay, I feel like I'm going off on a tangent here, but are you with me?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So
the old comments.
I don't see any comments.
It's okay. It's on the right.
Oh, okay. So the old school of making, like most people don't even realize how movies make money. So before I even ask, like, how did you raise money for the movies? Like, let's get a bigger perspective. Movies, it was a very closed system until just a couple of years ago. How could you see a movie in the 1990s? How could you even see a movie? There was no Netflix. There's no Amazon.
Yeah,
you had. What's that?
You went to the movie theater.
You went to the theater, or you rented a VHS cassette.
Yeah.
So, and these big companies controlled all that. You're not just going to randomly get into the Rite Aid or the Blockbuster. It's big companies controlling all the viewing of the movies. So in order to even be able to have your movie get seen, you needed to have a big star in your movie. So there's this big clusterfuck, I like to call it, of like just big money. It's like they'd say, if you wanted to make a movie in the 90s, it was like, and you want to get financed, like, well, who's the star? Can we get this guy in it, Because then the theaters might show it, and that's the only way to make money. Or what became more common is even if you don't have a huge actor, you sell the overseas rights. So even if you make a crap movie in the US, the overseas people, they have this big appetite for movies. And you can make Sharknado 7, that became a big hit, but like you can sell these movies overseas and you sell the rights to it. And it's a gross way to do it, I think. It's so like there's these rooms, there's these conventions where these buyers from different territories sit there and they look at a trailer and they look and see if action movies, is there like an explosion? Is there some sex? Great. $10,000. We'll give you the rights to distribute it in Thailand or some shit. It's gross. It's like, it's not art. It's totally like auctioning off your movie. And the friends of mine I said who actually have dealt with the business shit, it's like, it's another world. It's kind of like the Matrix, like you wake up and you're like, oh my God, this is terrible the way that the movie business used to be. And we ran into some guys who wanted to finance our movie with a old school deal where they're going to try to oversell the overseas rights. Nobody in the US is going to see our movie. It's going to go off to DVD and it's going to go in some catalog of shitty B movies. And we said, screw that. Not worth it to us. And these guys only are interested in making this quick profit. There's no integrity. It sucks. And a lot of these just going off on like 5 tangents here. But so that's the old way of doing it. Now the new way that, Jason Brubaker I was telling you about with filmmaking stuff, and I are friends, and I have been a big supporter of his because he has been trying to sort of spread the word for the last almost 8 years about digital distribution, which is essentially video on demand, which is taking your movie directly to an audience, building your fan base directly through the internet. And you're amazing at that because you know how to connect people with you've done crowdfunding and everything. And it's amazing because now people don't realize, people still have this backwards idea that you're going to go I'm going to make a short film and win something at Sundance, and somehow I'm going to get a producer, and then somehow they're going to make a feature, and somehow that's going to make money. It's like this completely non-grounded way of looking at things. Or people think, I'm going to take my feature, go to Sundance, and get a deal, which it doesn't happen like that anymore at all. The chance of an independent film getting a theatrical release is like winning the lottery. It's nothing. It's not going to happen. And then what happens is that a lot of these distribution companies take advantage of young filmmakers who don't know what they're talking about. And they'll say, oh, we'll give you 15%. And all they're doing is putting the movie on Netflix or something. And they're ripping people off. But the way to do it now is to not get the star and get this. It's to really find your audience and sell them a $7 entertainment nugget for 2 hours. That's it. That's what Quentin Tarantino's doing in the theaters. He's selling people an experience for $7 or 10 or whatever. And you do it, directly to your audience. So that's like the biggest problem people have in the beginning is they don't have a clear perspective of anything. It's like you're going to go, I want you to put money into my movie. Okay, great. What's your business plan? How's it going to make money? Well, we're going to go to Sundance and maybe somebody's going to buy it for $10 million. That's like the worst pitch ever. If you're an investor, it's like saying, I'm going to go on Shark Tank and just like hope that maybe they'll pick my idea without actually doing the numbers or understanding the process. Now, the good news is that if you know your audience or you make a broad appeal movie, or even nowadays, if you want to make a drama about, like you're doing, like that's lesbian themed, or you want to make a drama about, I think I knew someone who was doing one about like roller derby people. I was like, you're going to kill it because you can market to your roller derby fans. You don't need, and now that film budgets have dropped too, you don't need to raise up $2 million for your movie and then recoup it with this huge explosive success. You can recoup your budget with sell 10,000 copies, or 100,000 or whatever it's going to be. And now because of social media and because of Facebook ads and because of YouTube, you can leverage and position and advertise the same way that the big, companies do. Because they don't, I know friends that work at Paramount and they're younger and they're still pissed off that they're still using billboards. They're like, you can't track it. So that was a really long roundabout thing. But what I actually did for my movie, and this is 2006, this is before DSLRs. That was the other thing, man. If we had just had a DSLR camera, the whole thing would have gone very differently. The budget would have been different. But we had to use a $70,000 camera just to get HD. $70,000 just to get even basic HD. And now I can get a $600 camera to do the same thing. But here's what I did. I went around and I got the appropriate paperwork. And this was really tough because I wanted to be making a movie. So I was dealing with the lawyer a lot. And I had the documents and I had it set. So I at least knew I could present myself as a legitimate business person. And what I actually did was kind of nuts. I had no idea what to do. So I just went to a networking group. And I just signed up as a filmmaker. And I was actually there with dentists and accountants who were all looking for new clients. Like, hi, I'm a family dentist. I'm looking for people who need bridge work. And then there'd be the accountant, and he'd be like, hi, I'm the accountant. I'm looking for people who really want to work on, buttoning up their trust fund for their kids. And then I'd be like, hey, I'm a filmmaker, and I'm making this comedy, and I'm looking to sell $5,000 shares to raise $250,000. And everyone's like, everybody wanted to help. That was the thing. If they had the money, they would have given it to me. But, this is not, you really need to have a bit of money to be able to part with even $5,000 or $10,000. So, but this is how, like I talk about mindset, is that if you're committed and if you believe it and if you have the proper documents, or at least, you don't need what I had, which was actually, it's just crazy. I have it right here. It's my mouse pad right now. This is my private placement memorandum. Okay. I can't believe it's sitting there. I totally forgot. This is the document. This is a $10,000 document. If you go to an attorney and you do it what you're supposed to, these guys will charge you $10,000 to customize this thing, which includes a complete overview of the production, the minimum budget, statistics, projections, just like I paid to get projections done. And this was back in 2006. You had our low, expected, and better. And yeah, this thing was a beast, but that I could put this in somebody's hands who I wanted to invest and say, read this before you invest. I bet you that of my investors, which we had, when they said to get one person who's a stranger to give you a $20,000 check or a $10,000 check is a huge accomplishment. We always hear these huge success stories of Tarantino or something where they make big, but I was like, if you can get a stranger to write you a check, that is a big deal. Because, it's easy. Maybe if your family's rich or something, they're going to write you a check. But what happened is I actually eventually, 6 months I did that. I just stood up and I knew somebody would respond. I didn't know when or how. And one day I remember I did it every week, and part of it too, you have to have that drive. Like I was so driven, I was like insane. And I was like doing this. I was like, I have no idea who the hell is going to actually invest in this, And then one day this woman who I'd met there, she took me aside and she said, listen, I got to know you over the last 6 months. I believe in what you're doing. My brother owns a company in town. It's a it's a big company. They make optical lenses for the Mars rover. And he said he's really into movies, and I want to introduce you guys. So that was it. So I met with the guy, and we got to become friends. And then one day I finally, and after I give him the documents and we've gone out like 4 times, I said, so are you going to invest? I finally had the conversation. It was very out of a movie because I was so nervous about doing it. But I said, are you going to put money in? And he said, we're going to buy we're going to buy 4 shares. So he gave me a $20,000 check. And I was like, this is great. Now, then I got another guy in at 10,000. Another one was coming in at 10,000. And the thing that's really, I think I told this to you, is that I look at it like nobody who's in their early 20s should have to raise 6 figures of money without any support, not from the school, no guidance on how to do it. And I was just doing this all by myself. My parents had no idea. I had no friends to I just was trying to fix it all by myself. And I made this incredible accomplishment by raising the 40,000, but it was such a hustle that I ended up, I was like, I need to raise another $200,000. And it just, back then, this is also before the internet was big enough to really connect you with people. There was no Kickstarter. I was on the radio. I remember I was on the Brother Wease show. People were calling in like, this sounds awesome. And I was like, if I had just had a Kickstarter campaign back then, I could have easily raised the money there were thousands of people listening, but none of them had, they weren't going to be investing at the higher level. So, for that project, I didn't end up raising the whole amount. But it's also what fueled me to really want to help younger people to be like, look, you shouldn't, there's 2 things. First of all, you should write your script intelligently for your first movie, because no first feature by any of the big filmmakers, from Steven Spielberg to Martin Scorsese. Martin Scorsese started making cheap movies with Roger Corman. He wasn't out there making $1 million movie his first time. Christopher Nolan did following. These first features are not supposed to be expensive. You shouldn't be raising $250,000 in your first movie. But the beauty now is I have students in my program like this. Chris is 19 years old. He just shot his first feature, and the budget was I don't know what the budget was, but it was less than a year of film school. I'm telling you that much. I have a kid in Brazil who shot a feature for very little. So nowadays you have the equipment, you have these incredible cameras, you have these distribution networks. The cost of the movie is what needs to be questioned in the first place. Most people don't understand budgets. Like I said, Clerks could have been shot for $500. Where's your budget coming from? You're probably not paying your actors that much. You're definitely not, don't do a period piece. If you learn how to use your cameras right, it's really more about telling a story, which is like Swingers. I think Swingers is one of my favorite examples. Doug Liman. You got Vince Vaughn. You got Jon Favreau. It's mostly just them talking and going to Las Vegas. It's such a simple production-wise shoot, but it's a great story. And that's where people that's where people need to focus for their first movie. So they're not, trying to raise all that money. But nowadays, if we had tried to shoot Breaking Balls back nowadays with these cameras, I would have shot it with a $40,000 budget easily. But like I said, you want to make a feature for your first one that you can handle. And then also that gives you much more leverage when you when you're like, I really do need money. Then you have so much more. I raised that money too without anything to show people. I didn't have my short film that I made at NYU because, again, I think the guidance there is so terrible. They don't sit you down. What I do with my students is be like, what kind of movies do you want to make? That's really the only question there is. It's not like, what themes do you want to explore? It's like, I was in school, I was a comedy guy. And at that school, it was a terrible place to be a comedy person because they're so serious and full of themselves. And like, they could see I'm a comedy person, but I ended up doing this ultra serious short film because I had been like, I got into that artsy mode. I made a film I couldn't do anything with because it was so like, they were like, experiment, explore. I was like, no, I should have made a movie that showcases the fact that I can do comedy so I could leverage that. But I made this ultra serious thing that I don't even want to show people. And it cost like all this money to do. And there wasn't anyone there guiding me like, look, what do you want your career to look like? You want to make comedies? Well, why are you making this drama? And that's what I say, the calling card these days is not, people say, oh, I'm going to go to film school. I'm going to make a short film and that's your calling card. Well, maybe that was the case in the 80s. It's not the case. Everybody has a short film these days on YouTube. Why would you pay $80,000 to do that? Your real calling card is your feature. Even if it's crap, like James Cameron does a great interview with him where he's just like, just make it. He's like, even if it's crap, you were a director. And he's a great example because I learned this. You know what James Cameron's first movie credit is?
What?
It's not Terminator. It's Piranha 2. It's this terrible horror movie about flying piranhas that attack people. And I think I read that he got kind of roped into that, but that's his first movie credit. So I'm like, I've seen other filmmakers too, famous ones, where their first movie, Francis Ford Coppola's first couple movies are like, he did one called The Rain People, you've never heard of, even Spielberg did 2 TV movies that no one can even find.
Alex says that he loves Piranha 2.
What's that?
Alex in the comments section, he said he loves Piranha 2.
Oh, it looked campy to me. But I'd say is that, like with Spielberg, it's like they make people. We celebritize these filmmakers. We put them on a pedestal, like, oh, they're so amazing, and they just came right out of the gate. It's like, no, man, how did they actually start? They all started with something small, and a lot of them, their first thing was not that great, and it also takes the pressure off. Like if I had that mentality from school where it's, oh, I got to make this amazing project. No, man, just get it done. That's a big enough accomplishment. That's going to be enough to get you more work as a director, to impress people that you got it shot, and to leverage the next project. That's why with Chris, I'm like, I don't know, I helped him with the script. I don't know how good it's going to be, but I don't think it doesn't really matter. What matters is that he did it and that his next one will be better. So I don't know. I feel like I kind of went off there.
No, I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that there is an open seat. If anybody wants to jump in and ask a question live, they can, or you can ask questions in the comments section. So we have some comments. That was awesome. Thank you. But feel free to ask questions. Awesome.
Yeah, I don't see the questions. I think you see the questions.
It's you should be able to see it on the right if anybody asks any questions. But do you see the comments?
I see the question box, but I don't see anything in there.
Make sure you've clicked all.
Oh, here we go. Go to the bottom or the top?
You can scroll. Yeah, it's on the top, and then you can scroll down.
Oh, it's so bad, it's good. That, what's funny though, Alex Rod, like Piranha 2, is that's the other thing about this current market is that, again, if you keep your budget, like if you don't blow, your money budget on 35 millimeter film like a fool, there's a movie called what is that? The bird one? There's The Room. Okay.
Yeah.
You've heard of The Room, right? So The Room is so bad that it's awesome. like you were saying. If you can make a movie that's that bad, and then the guy Tommy Wiseau like stands by it, like it's so terrible that it's amazing to watch.
Well,
and Sharknado.
Yeah, that's why people love watching the old Grindhouse movies, because they're so bad, but people had such passion that they put into it to make these movies with aliens or, you know, women with big breasts running around in cars and, you know.
That sounds like a great movie title. Can we make that? Sure. Women with big breasts running around in cars. I like that. I think it would say. Someone said, what advice would you give to someone just starting out in directing indie film? Can you be more specific? I would love, that's the biggest question, is get specific with what your question is. So are you saying, have you directed anything? What is your goal? That's the real, what do you want to do? You want to direct, the real thing I usually get from people is, and what I kind of anticipate, because I've met enough filmmakers to know, and people say I want to direct. Usually when you say you want to direct, it's kind of like I want to write. It's like, well, what do you want to direct? And if you're not specific, you're not going to get the result you want. So some people say I want to direct, and they end up directing dog food commercials, or music videos, which is, if you want to direct music videos, that's cool. But most people I meet want to direct a movie, a feature, a real movie. And they also, they want to direct a feature, and then they'll do a short. And then I'm like, and most people never question this. It's kind of nuts. It's like, well, how do you think that short film is going to get you into making a feature? It's like, I want to build houses, so I'm going to make a dollhouse. So will you hire me to build your real house? Like, no. Can you build a real house? Well, I built a ton of dollhouses, and my dollhouses have won awards. Well, can you build a real house? You know, because a feature is a real house. That's a product. That's something people will pay money to see. No one will pay money to see a short. You know, and that was Dove Siemens who first, he said that to me. He said that on like a web video once, and he was like, don't make shorts. Nobody buys shorts. And I was like, holy crap. I felt like a spell had been broken. I was like, why is everybody making shorts? Like, I say that short films are like practice. They are essential, but the way most people make their short films is like it's like getting gold-plated basketball shoes because you want to be like Michael Jordan. It's like spending all your money on the practice court. You're like, I want to be a great basketball player, so I'm going to get the best shoes and the best shorts and the best like tank top ever, and that's going to somehow make me a great basketball player, and I spend a ton of money on it. Well, no, spending $50,000 on your short film doesn't make you a better filmmaker. It doesn't impress investors. All it shows people is that you're terrible at budgeting.
Yeah.
And that's why all these kids from AFI and USC, and even I've talked to master's students at USC who spent all this money on their shorts, they're doing the festival circuit. They look up and go, what am I doing? This is not, there's no direct path from this short film and these festivals to making a feature. You have to actually write the feature, put the crew together, put the budget together, and shoot it. And no one's going to do it for you.
Yeah, and I have sold my shorts directly to my fans, so I would say keep your budget small. My first short that I distributed, my budget was $100. My second short was $500, and most of that went to the composer. And I sold 500 of each of those for $10 each.
That's amazing. That is so, and you're very entrepreneurial minded. So if you, and you know, I've never heard of anybody doing that with shorts. But the point is, if you have a fan base and you have that business mindset, yeah, you can definitely do that. But most people who are making the shorts don't have a plan, or it's the festival. Hello? Uh-oh, you kind of froze. And hello?
Yep. Okay,
yeah, you froze for a second. But Boomy Benjamin, I'm sorry, I kind of went off there, but did you have a specific question about the directing? Or we could just keep chatting.
Oh, she's thought about doing a short.
A silent short for like an exercise. I mean, that's what they do at NYU and USC.
I did Both of my shorts were silent.
That you sold?
Yeah.
How much did you sell them for?
Oh.
I said, how much did you sell them for? Sorry, guys. I feel like Alexia has frozen, and now I don't know what to do.
All right. Yep.
You back? You know, like I said, silent shorts. Like if you want to practice, and if you have a fan base like Alexia did, you know, you can definitely get it to them. But you know, I think silence to me, I had a pretty strong position on that with film school. I was like, you know, it's a great exercise. Like I did it when I was in high school, but eventually you're going to have people talking. So that's why I always wondered why people were paying all this money to do that. I actually wrote an article on No Film School about how to do a first year black and white silent film. And it's a cool concept, you know. No coffee, yeah. If you're making videos for your business, what equipment do you need? And I'll come right back to you, Boomy Benjamin. I have a course that I'm selling. All you need to shoot a video these days is a DSLR camera, and get some prime lenses. If you add in a 50mm lens to your DSLR camera, you can get beautiful, beautiful images. And I have examples of that on my I don't know where they are, but really,
on your website, can you put the link in there?
Let's see. I have a few different sites. What do I? I actually don't have that. I'll just put Film School Secrets up there because that's my main teaching site. But the great thing about the DSLR cameras with a 50mm lens, what I teach people is that you still want to be able to light, but the iris opens up so wide that you can often shoot things with just natural light, which for people who are beginning is very helpful because then you're not worried about a backdrop or, you know, softbox lights. I am a designer and wanted to do one on how design affects our lives, from giving direction to changing perspective. Well, I mean, have you ever, I guess, you know, you want to go to YouTube or, you know, find something like my course and, you know, learn the basics of how to script a story and shoot it. But the good news is, I mean, you can shoot a story with your iPhone or with a very simple camera these days. You don't have to do a whole production. You can also, I mean, if you have a little bit of money, you know, you can hire, there's so many videographers out there. You know, you can just kind of go to somebody and say, I want to have fun with the real stuff. Yeah, I use DSLR is just, I love if you're looking for low budget. I could put a link to my reel up here. Let me see. And I'll show you that you can look at what you can do with, here, this is my reel. And I was like, this was all shot with a $600 camera and like almost no lights. Everything.
Can you post what camera you used?
I use the Canon T2i, but that was old, so you should get the Canon T5i. That's what I like. Now they're making better and better cameras all the time, but the thing about the DSLR is that you have the interchangeable lenses, and the lens is really what makes it. You know, DSLRs have these big sensors, and then you can change the lens. And when you have that nice the 50mm lens is really the miraculous one. It's like it makes things look so awesome.
Yeah, and I think Amber had a question about lighting that she mentioned to me earlier. So
what was that? What's the question?
Well, she does yoga videos where she does like workouts on her Periscope. So she asked me before the blab about what your suggestion was for lighting.
Is she using a phone or is she using? I mean, the basics of lighting are just make sure there's light and don't put the light behind your subject. like we could do it now, but
yeah, see, she's posting now. Oh, there we go.
Like if this works better at night when there's not, but if there's no light, if you have a light source, the biggest problem with cell phone videos is that the people, if you put the light source behind someone, let me see. No, there's too much light in the front. But you know when someone looks like a silhouette, like they're in the witness protection program, that's called backlighting, and that's the biggest problem. But yeah, 3-point setup lighting. I mean, really the key is to just make sure that there's light on the people. And then if you want to get more technical, it's the quality of the light. With cell phones, you can't really adjust the white balance, but you know, I'd have to see the specific setup. But that's the biggest problem I see with people is that they have the light behind the person and they look like a shadow. Especially if you're in a yoga studio, you might have to add some lights because they're typically pretty dark and relaxing. But it's probably not, you probably don't want to put huge floodlights in the yoga studio. Everybody like close your eyes and go into, what do they call it? The death pose, the pose at the end when you lay on your back?
It's Vinyasa, I'm going to say it wrong.
I forget what it is, but it would be kind of hard to relax with those big lights in there. But yeah, I mean,
she's
really.
Coming in, she's going to ask it live.
This is cool. Yeah, I mean.
Hi. I'm Ashley. I'm the one who asked the question. And I have to be headed to a yoga class right now. So the pose at the end is called Shavasana. To answer that one for you.
Yeah.
And the problem is where I film, it's really dark. And it's in my living room, and we have a lot of tree cover, so there isn't a lot of natural light that comes in. So I just need to get, I'm basically going to have to get equipment to make it work. I just don't know what to get.
Right. Well, you can. I can hear myself. There's just a few lighting kits you can buy. You can buy a software lighting kit, you can buy these lights and everything. It's just basically their lights and your lamps have power. And I mean, if you go on Amazon and look for video lighting, you're going to find a ton of results. But if you want a specific example, email me and I'll send you a link.
Okay, cool. I will definitely do that. Thank you. I appreciate the help.
Sure.
I'm just gonna because there's a echo. Can you put your email in the comment box?
Let's see. I'm gonna put my
or website or whatever you want.
I'm gonna have them email me at the business site.
Right.
The echo's coming. Okay. Oh, and then Miss Boomy Benjamin posted a nice 3-point lighting image right there. It's absolutely, it's great. I actually know, I was talking with a younger guy who's a DP who started shooting when he was 15. And this is why I really I tell people to skip school because he started when he was 15 in high school. And he actually was getting hired to shoot interviews with horror directors, like famous horror directors. Like he was interviewing like Wes Craven and like the guy who played Freddy Krueger and stuff. And he was 15. And he was telling me how, I said, how'd you learn how to light? So he went on Google and he Googled video or film lighting and he found that 3-point diagram and they had given him lights and he was like, he's looking at his phone or whatever. And he's like, okay, and he sets it up. And that was his like film school, you know, Googling 3-point lighting. Because that's literally what they'll do at NYU. I remember it's like they had the technical, they call it the lab or something. They literally take all of us kids who are paying all this money and they like take out the lights, these old beaten up lights from the 70s. And they're like, yeah, put the one, you know, they show you 3-point lighting. And I was like, wow, that's amazing.
So I just want to wrap up here with, so what are 3 reasons why investors, like for you in the past, maybe examples that investors have invested in your productions?
Well, I think they got to believe in you. Yeah, it is an expensive life. They got to believe in you, and really they're investing. But what the real reason, because I've actually went through this when I had my trial and error, I made, it's a weird balance because people they don't need to, like, they're not going to invest in you because they really think it's going to be like $1 million investment. They need to see, they want to invest in your passion, but they wanted to invest in my passion. They also really liked the story idea. They could see that it would be a funny movie, but they also could tell that I knew what I was doing. And that's really what the paperwork is there for. Even if you just go and you have a 4-page business plan, that makes sense. Even if you don't have that big document I showed you, the fact that because most people out there who are trying to raise money, we're artists. So we're like, oh, just give me some money. People don't have that perspective. But if you just show that, that was the second reason. Like, they believed in me in the thing. They saw that I knew what I was doing, and that I was serious. And I think the other thing that was a big part of it is that I had already rallied a bunch of other professionals around me. This was not for pay. This is a big part of making a movie and this is what I taught Chris to do. In the course that the mentorship course that I do, I taught him. And if you don't mind, I don't know if you're going to ask me to pitch my course or to tell you about it after this. So I rallied people around me to make me, not just to make me look better, but when people see that there's already a team behind it, that's a big thing. Because that's not just you saying, hey man, can you give me like 20 grand? And I'm going to go make it. I was like, no, I got a DP. I got a sound guy. I got all these cool people. They want to help. Everybody wants to help. We need the money to get started. So I taught, what I started doing after the Film School Secrets course, which was a sort of low ticket course that was a real crash course. I started a mentorship program specifically for younger filmmakers, or for people who, I have students who want a career change. They've been doing their day job for a few years, and I always wanted to direct a movie. And I'm like, I'm going to give you this no BS guidance, not only on how to get your movie made, but how to actually make it compelling and make a movie. Not really a film, a movie. How to deliver an experience to your audience. How to make a project that people are going to want to be part of. So with Chris, what was really amazing is that he was my student. He was like 18 when he started. He's 19. What I really encourage people to do is you leverage your hometown. That's another big, reason why people invested in me. That's a 4th reason. I was in Rochester, New York. These guys, investors were all from Rochester. And the idea of seeing their movie, their hometown in any movie was a big deal. Like, I love my hometown. I want to make something exciting here. People love that. Mark, the guy I worked with, he refinanced his mortgage to pay for his movie. He's an older guy, and he did a live screening of the movie. Now the movie went off and it did the overseas thing, but he did live screenings of the movie, and they sold out for 2 or 3 weeks. And I was like, you could do that if you shoot a movie in the middle of Idaho and you have a little theater there and you do a screening. Who's not going to come to a movie that was shot in your hometown? And then you can really recoup some money that way too. But with Chris, what was interesting is he was like, I was like excited. I was like, you can get your high school friends involved. People are going to love it. But he was like, no, I don't want to shoot it in my hometown. We have a vacation house in Florida. I want to shoot there. And I was like, well, did you know anyone there? And he was like, no. And I was like, all right, well, that's going to change. You're going to meet people, but it's going to be a little more work. But he took my coaching. And what's so amazing, I'll share his Facebook page, actually. Let me share that. He followed all the instructions that I gave him, and he, within like a month or 2, had a whole cast and crew. So he had new friends. That's the big problem, I think, and the reason people go to film school a lot is because they don't know how to connect with people. And they've heard the word connection so much, they don't realize that that's kind of a misinterpreted things, because in the film business, I say it's not about who you know, it's about what you can produce. If you want to direct, If you want to just if you want to be a sound operator, it's about who you know. But if you want to direct things, it's about what you can produce, because no one's going to give you a directing job for an $8 million movie just because they like you. You have to show that you can do it. So with Chris, when he went down there and didn't know anyone, I gave him all this. I was like, dude, I know people are going to be drawn to you like a magnet if you do this the way I tell you to do it. And he has a whole cast, a whole crew. And I love the videos. Let me see that he posted when they were shooting, because he's a 19-year-old kid who shot a feature, and I'm putting his site there, and he's got these great videos of him with the crew, and they're laughing, and he made friends, and I was like, this is, that's part of what I teach so the course that I create is called Film School Solution, and it's actually, you can go to filmschoolsolution.com, or filmschoolsecrets.com is actually where there's a webinar where I explain this in more detail and talk about the course. But the most important thing to me was that I wanted to take people and be like, if your goal is to direct a feature, how can I help you make that happen as fast as possible with as little bullshit as possible? And, that was super exciting. And I was like, really a lot of making a movie is that it's getting people excited about what you're doing. Yeah. And that's where a lot of filmmakers lack, because people, if you're the introverted type, it's like, it doesn't mean you have to be like a politician, but it's really
kind of do.
I guess you can, but it's more like I look at it more like if you can genuinely share your passion rather than be like the problem. And I think this is the problem with film school, is I have to come back to this, which is really interesting. Film schools really screw people's heads up. It's a really bad, it's like you want to get training and mentorship in filmmaking. I had a mentor, he changed my life, but school for this top, it's like going to school for tying your shoelace. Like you don't spend it's not an academic field. So it screws people's heads up. They get too intellectual. And there's a reputation of film school grads that I found out about that I was friends with in LA. This was really crazy. So I learned about why it's not about who you know, by the way, because my first roommate, I won't tell you his name, but my first roommate in LA had directed a movie with Kevin Spacey and Danny DeVito. And he was friends with Kevin Spacey and Danny DeVito, like on the phone. But he was my roommate because it wasn't about who you know, it's about what you can produce. So they could be best friends with you, but if you don't have a project, they're not going to just put you, unless you're Adam Sandler or something, right? So I forgot so his girlfriend was a script supervisor on the show Numbers. And I remember she was saying that they had one of the guys on the crew was he had a master's in film, and he just had that attitude. He had this academic, I'm somehow superior to you, because most people on film sets did not get a master's degree or even a bachelor's degree. Most people just get into the business. There's more film school grads now than there used to be. But his car got egged. I remember they were telling me, because he just had this superior attitude. And there's a book called Film School Confidential by Karen Kelly and Tom Edgar, I think, who are other NYU grads. And they said the same thing. So I didn't feel like I was the only one. They said, here's the big tip. If you get a master's degree in film, you cannot put that on your resume. They're actually not going to hire you because you are just like too up in your head and superior and intellectual, when they just want someone that can get shit done. And that's why all the people I know who are working, most of them, the guys, they didn't go to school, just start working. Or they go to school and then they have to start at the bottom. So anyway, but like I said, if you don't need school, you just need to have the right mindset, and you need to know what you want. And if you want to make a feature, you gotta just do it. And I was saying to people, get mentorship if you can, whether if anyone watching this wants to work with me, or you find a local filmmaker, somebody to guide you. It's so helpful. And that's the other problem with school, I say, is that they put 32 kids in a class. And there's no room for individual mentorship there. So I feel like I went on there, but I hope that's been helpful for people.
Super helpful, for at least I appreciate it. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Is there any last last things you have to say that you don't want to make. You want to make sure everybody in this room knows.
I think I said a lot. I think if anyone has any final questions, I'd be happy to. But actually, I would say that's a good point. Joe Wilson TV says a lot of people in LA are waiting to be picked, and that's exactly true. And that's really the biggest thing to know about anyone who's successful, or even just working, is that it's all about your attitude, and you have to make this stuff happen yourself.
Yeah.
You have nobody. Even P.T. Anderson couldn't get funded. So that's not to discourage anyone. That's to say, you got to give yourself permission. Don't wait for that producer who's going to come and do it. Don't wait to win Sundance. Don't wait to get your degree, especially not that. Because then you're going to be like, this is not, people who've been successful in the business, even the guy who made Paranormal Activity is a great example. He was just a worker at Sony. He had a normal, I don't know what department he worked in, but he was just a normal, he had the golden handcuffs, we call it. A lot of my friends have that, where they have a good paying job, and so they don't do what they really want to do. And then he just said, fuck it, I'm going to make Paranormal Activity, and it turned out that, that was a pretty good movie.
So just wrapping up here. Right, exactly. If you have social media, you can make it happen. But just if you have an idea, you can make it happen.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that's the other thing too, is what's interesting about directing is that you can, thank you, Joe, you're welcome. The interesting thing about a lot of young filmmakers, I would say anything is learn how to not just write, but focus on the experience you want to deliver to your audience. Key. This is why Tarantino and Spielberg are so successful. So Tarantino, across the board, you could say he's a brilliant whatever. He delivers a reliable experience to the audience every time. You're going to be thrilled when you go see a Tarantino movie. You just know it. You're going to have an experience, and that's why people go. People who go to see Wes Craven movies back before he passed away know they're going to get a scary experience, And you don't have to be the best of anything. You should collaborate. If you're not the best writer, find a good writer. If you, what people really want is a vision. So when I was directing the movie, I was I had a script. I wasn't even, messing with the camera or the lights. I had people around me who loved doing that, who wanted a project that they could be excited about. And I was providing that. I was providing the excitement of the leadership of that. And so you don't have to, this is the other problem with young people. I see the big things I think, I have to learn to be this best camera person. No. Yeah. There's so many, there's a lot of good camera people, but there's not as many leaders who are going to say, this is my vision. Let's make a movie. That's what people want. And especially if you bring that to a small town, it's huge. People will give you so much free stuff. They'll let you use their location.
Yeah, restaurants will give you food.
They'll give you food. I rented a 14,000 seat baseball stadium for a week for $1,000. A 14,000 seat baseball stadium. Okay, now if I wanted to get even close to that and rent something around in LA, it would have been. That could have been $100,000. That.
Yeah.
But like I said, outside of LA, you can be a rock star, and then come to LA with your cool movie. But don't the worst thing you can do is just move to LA and be I'm gonna do I have no plan, but I have big dreams, and I'm gonna somehow, because you're gonna be there's a million people like that out here, no idea what they're doing. Or out there. I'm not in LA right now, but yeah. But just, focus on your passion.
Yeah. So I'm going to encourage our audience right here, right now, who's engaging. Thank you so much, to follow us each individually on Blab, and you can email us any additional questions through our websites. And I'm in Los Angeles, and we're doing more Blabs. And especially on Monday, Seth is going to be interviewing me. So you want to make sure Blabs
I want
daily.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
This is fun. I'm actually, I don't know if I told you, I'm going to be going to Costa Rica in a week.
Yeah.
So I definitely always wanted to do some travel blabbing too. So, so this is fun. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm glad, you know, we could inspire and yeah, and do this. So thanks everybody, and we'll see you soon. Be creative today.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening.